Hi guys, welcome to another Raspberry Productions video. Here from sunny Sydney, raining all the time. Today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the brake pads on the front of a 2009 Ford XR6. I believe they're that bad that we may have to change the disc rotors as well. First off, what you're going to do, before you jack it up, make sure you just loosen off each of the 5 bolts, just so they're not super tight, so you can use the weight of the car, and then start to jack and then remove the wheel fully. Okay, so to loosen the bolts, I've got the actual XR6 lever here. Put on each of the nuts, let's give it a nice loosen, maybe 1 turn, not any more than that, because you don't want the wheel to come loose, because then you could actually cause damage to the thread itself. So just loosen them 1 turn, and we can start to jack the vehicle. Okay, that's them all loose now. Now there is a jacking point just under here, so I'm going to use the XR6 jack itself. Now if you slide that just under there's a ridge with 2 notches on. Make sure you get the jack perfectly in line between the 2 notches, then start to wind up. On the XR6, the hex nut at the end is the same as the locking wheel nuts. So let's get. Okay, so that's jacked enough now. What we was looking for is just the front wheel just to come off the ground there. I actually had to postpone the video then because the rain got too much, so had to go back in and wait for it to dry out. So here we go again. So now you've got the wheel off the floor and you're happy that it can spin freely. You probably want it so you can get your hand under there, not too high. What we're going to do now is take the wheel off fully. Right, now once the wheel's off, what we're going to do is just pull it and take it off, and we're actually going to slide it under the car. It just gives you a bit more protection when you're working under the car if the jack was to slip for any reason. Now you've got this spacer plate that takes a bit of heat away from the brakes. That just pulls off. Just take that off and rest it somewhere you know you're not going to damage it. Right, now I've had a good inspection around the disc itself, looked at the pads inside the caliper there, and feeling on the inside, I'll try and get the camera around there, but the disc's completely shot. See that? It's nice and smooth there, that's how you want it. All this rough is where there's been metal on metal contact from the pad. So in this instance we're actually going to change the disc rotors as well as the pads, but what I'll do is I'll take the caliper apart as if I was just replacing the pads, so you can see that, and then I'll continue with the disc replacement as well. Right, so to remove the pads couldn't be simpler. Get a 12mm spanner. Just want to get that on the top bolt there, right at the top, leaving the bottom bolt tight and as it is. Just undo that. Shouldn't be much more than hand tight. So take that off. Right, so you may have to stop this from turning. I'll just get an adjustable on that. Seems to spin freely. Right, so I just had to hold the back nut just so that I could get the front one off. There seems to be some grit and dirt in there, so once that's off, just pull that out, and that should actually allow the whole caliper to rotate away from the pads. Now you've got the 2 pistons here that you're going to have to push back for when you change the pads over, but I'll show you that in a second. For now, you can actually remove the pads. A bit harder doing one-handed. And there you go, that's the pad off. So you've got one on the front, one on the back. These are pretty much shot, but I would imagine that this back one is purely metal, seeing it from seeing what it's done to the disc. May want to just get your spanner in there, just give it a little lever to get that off. Again, there you go, that's just pure metal. I'd imagine that's been going like that for the last 100 k's or so, looking at the damage. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually remove the caliper, which is another 2 bolts, slightly bigger, just inside. I think they look to be about 19mm, and then pull the rotor off. We'll be putting a new rotor on, push the pistons back, new pads in there, and push it all back together and see how we go. That's 2 15mm bolts, not 19, one top, one bottom. So you just remove those. What I'm going to do after I remove those, I'm actually going to push the caliper back in and just pop that bolt in. But for now, to get them out, I'll actually leave that open, easier access. Now you can see the damage on the back of that disc is pretty extensive, unusable now. You could get it skimmed, but for the price of some new disc rotors, they're not actually that expensive. I believe these were about $80 each when I bought them down at a local Super Cheap also. Okay. Okay, so just size up your new discs versus old discs, put them next to each other, make sure the bolt patterns are all the same and that. But as you can see, this one's so badly damaged we couldn't have reused that. So we've got some new ones here. Put new ones on, same way you took it off, line it up on the threads and just push it straight away over. When we bolt the caliper back in, that'll actually line it up. There's no locating screws on these, so good and bad thing I guess. One, you're going to have it rotating like that, but the other, they do tend to round off a lot, so you haven't had to drill anything out to get them off. Okay, so same fashion to get it back on, we're just going to lift the caliper up and around the disc itself, line up the threads in the back, get our bolts, right, so now we've done that, we'll tighten that up with the ratchet, make sure it's nice and tight, not going to go anywhere, and then I'll show you how to retract the pistons and then push the pads in, and then hopefully have a new front brake on this side. Right, now that's back on and tight, and I'm happy that that's not going to go anywhere. Just remove that top bolt that you just put in there, so hold it back and hinge that caliper back off. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a G-clamp to push both these pistons back in. Before you do so, you have to go into the engine bay and release the cap for the brake reservoir so that any liquid actually can come back up. Okay, so to get into the bonnet, all you have to do, down there on the driver's side, flick that catch open, round to the front, lever just above the Ford badge, and up she goes. Now this is our brake reservoir right here. Clip off both sides, pull that off and remove the gasket there. Just leave it like that until we're finished with the brakes, because what you're going to see when you push the pistons back, that level's actually going to rise. So as mentioned, we're going to push these pistons back now. Get your G-clamp, get over the caliper like that, and then wind it in and hopefully push that piston back. You want to get it back as far as you can really, so gives you a little bit more room for when you're putting the pads on. and so that can slide back over the pads. Okay, so when you're happy that this is tight, and when you're happy that both of these are pushed back, make sure that the brake fluid hasn't toppled over the reservoir. Get your new brake pads. I've already put the one on the back. All you need to do is line up these prongs with these gaps. So push caliper back a bit further, push it in. Make sure your anti-squill plates are on okay, and then all you're going to do is slowly rotate the caliper in and over. Get your bolt from before, put that back in the top. .12mm spanner. Just make sure the bottom one's tight as well. Now you might want to just go around and check all the bolts that you've undone, but I'm pretty happy that I've checked those again. Get your heat shield back on, so it goes with the ridge at the back, so smooth on the front, all the way on. Get your wheel. Now get them as tight as you can by hand, but we're actually going to re-tighten them when the wheel's on the floor. Wind your jack back down. And go for a final re-tighten. Then of course don't forget to put your reservoir cap back on the top, and that's it. Repeat for the next side and you'll have your new front brakes. Thanks for watching. Please give me the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.